Now, 2 weeks into the new year, there is no clarity on when school children in basic schools will return to the classroom. And that is a claim of the Deputy Ranking Member on Parliament's Education Committee, Dr. Clemente Park. The Builsa South MP contends that children in private schools already in school will have an unfair advantage over their colleagues in public schools. Dr. Park is warning that if the situation is not resolved immediately, he will hold the Education Minister before Parliament, which is set to resume next week.
If you are going to have a strong and robust educational system, you ought to pay a lot of attention to basic education. As we speak now, heads of basic schools in Ghana, public basic schools, teachers, don't know when basic schools, public basic schools, are going to reopen. The original communication that many had, particularly those who were seeking transfer to new schools, was that they should report before the 4th of this month to suggest that the schools should have opened on the 4th. That has not happened. As we speak today, private basic schools across the country have reopened, and yet we have no idea of exactly when public basic schools will reopen. This should be a cause for concern. And indeed, parents and teachers are worried about the fact that we don't seem to know when, and we don't seem to have a regular academic calendar now also for the basic school system.
As Deputy Ranking Member, have you tried to find out what exactly may be the challenge why these schools are still not reopening?
Well, I have not made contact with the Minister and I have not made contact with the Director General. But we shouldn't be asking them to do what they are being paid by the taxpayer to do. It is their responsibility to manage the educational sector of this country. We as members of Parliament clearly have oversight. And what I am doing is part of my oversight responsibility. So I expect that government, through the ministry or the Ghana Education Service, would come out and let the good people of this country know the reasons why public basic schools are yet to reopen. That is their responsibility. If they don't, when Parliament resumes, clearly we will file questions and perhaps look at inviting the minister to the committee.
Let's get some responses from the Education Ministry. Kwesi Kwatin speaks for the ministry and he joins us. Thank you very much, Kwesi Kwatin. Now, why have public schools at the basic level not reopened whilst their colleagues in private schools are already in school?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think the comparison is helpful because at the end, private schools are not competing with public schools. The most important thing is that students are able to get the instructional hours, get the necessary content hours, and of course, are able to finish the syllabus or their curriculum. But
so when will children in basic schools go to school?
So you ask the question, let me land respectfully. So, I mean, like you rightfully put it, at the end of the day, we want to know when students are going to school. If you recall, we have to appreciate, of course, I mean, have a dispassionate conversation and then appreciate the issue. Then at least we'll be able to, answer your question about whether or not students are going to school, and which time they are going to school.
Okay.
Yes, as I speak with you, the Minister for Education has done something. And of course, that thing that he did obviously did not come from a party, with regards to school reopening and students' academic calendar. Yes, we do admit at the ministry that for some time now, when it comes to, communications about clear timelines and academic calendar of students, yes, there have to be some discrepancies and inconsistencies in it in time past. It is a more reason why the Minister for Education, Honorable Dr. Yadutum, has said that under his watch, we are not going to see this, and this is going to be the time of, a thing of the past. And so he's directed, apparently gone ahead to set up a committee, of which that committee have been doing their work and their draft report is ready. The work of the committee is to come out with a one-time calendar. And that calendar is not only going to be for the 2021-22 academic year, but of course, beyond that, 2022, 2023, and even 2024. So, what I can assure parents is that everybody should come down within this week. We are very hopeful that the committee will come out with this report so that we address this challenge about the inconsistencies in our academic timetable once and for all. Because yes, that admission has already been made at our end by the ministry that, of course, even if you look at, for instance, WIEC, for instance, the students writing an exam, their calendar has changed. I mean, recently students wrote BEC in November, which has not been the case, has not been the norm. We are seeing university students, taking up the admissions in January, which in the past or in time past was September. So yes, we do admit that post-COVID, most of as part of getting back to our normalcy, most of the academic calendar changed, and of course it brought some level of discrepancy and inconsistencies in our understanding, especially when we compare the current timetable to what we witnessed in the past. And so what I can assure parents is that hopefully by the close of this week, the committee, which was chaired by Reverend Ntim Forjo, the Deputy Minister of Education, in charge of general education, has finished their work, and we are very hopeful that within the week they will come out to announce the date for reopening of the school. And what is more interesting is that with this work, it wasn't only the ministry that did it. The committee consisted of members from CHAS, members from GES, representatives from NACA, and of course, some parents and teacher union that all came together to draw this timetable once and for all. So yes, we do admit the challenge, but we have been working on it, and we are very hopeful that by close of week, we'll address that challenge. And of course, this whole discrepancies in the communication of timetables and of course, academic calendar will be a thing of the past.
Mr. Kwarteng, what you have told us, which is clear, is that the committee's work will be available this week. The report will be available this week. When will the ministry take a decision as to when students will go to school? When can we expect that decision to be announced?
I think I premise that on the work of the committee, and I am unable to prejudice the work of the committee. What is more important is that there was a committee that was put in place. The committee is done with their draft reports. Of course, our president leadership is also making their inputs. And the work of the committee was that extensive and collaborative.
Very well.
All stakeholders on board. And whatever decision that will be communicated will be the position of the ministry, of course, relative to the work of the committee. So I cannot say that the ministry is going to take a different position, because the committee was instituted by the ministry.
Yes, Mr. Kwarteng, so the deputy ranking member on the Education Committee raises a number of issues, including the fact that 44,000 teachers left the teaching profession in 2021 alone. I understand you are seeking some further official briefing on this, but is this something that you will look into?
As of now, let me admit that I have not been able to confirm the figures. Of course, today I have made a lot of contacts with GS, and I have not been able to confirm the figures. So I will respectfully decline a comment on that, at least for today. So that subsequently, when I'm able to confirm the figures, and of course, look at probably the causes for that level of attrition, then we are able to probably take the conversation from there.
Thank you very much. That's Kofi Asari. He speaks for the Education Ministry. We have joining us on Zoom the Executive Director of Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asari. He joins us on the phone. First, what is your reaction to the delay? We've had the explanation from Kofi Asari, who speaks for the ministry. But how do you react to this when their counterparts in private schools are already in school?
Good evening, and good evening to your cherished audience. 3 months ago or so, the minister assured us that he was putting together a committee to take over the determination of the calendar for the academic year, after we complained severally about the repetitive changes that it was subjected to. And so, yes, we are told that the committee has actually made some proposals. But they are consulting or bouncing it past the head teachers and other stakeholders at the school level for their acceptance. So at least we now know that we are going to be having a timetable that is not the timetable drawn by people from inside the GS headquarters and the MOE headquarters without consulting wide. And as the PRO said, this time there's wide consultation. It means that previously there was no wide consultation, and that there was a limited timetable which was drawn by a few people, or one or two people, without cognizance to other factors that may have been omitted. So I think we have to wait by the end of this week, I'm sure we should receive feedback from the Ghana Education Service in respect of its academic year schedule through the information I have on the ground. Yes, it is a bit worrying. It is a bit worrying because private schools have reopened. But if you look at the sequence of things, someone called the junior high school training in the junior high school curriculum training is scheduled for, I think, on the 14th or so. It looks as if junior high schools cannot go to school until that training has ended. We all know that the national standard test led to the postponement of the vacation by 1 week, which means teachers were forced to spend one more week in school because of the NST. And we expected, that 1 week would be atoned for, in this new year. So hopefully, end of this week we get the new calendar. For me, the most important thing is the test of character of the timetable that will be developed. It is not about whether a timetable will emerge or not. It will definitely emerge. But whether the timetable will stand the entire academic year without being subjected to any further changes.
And you have released an outlook for this year as far as the education sector is concerned. We'll get into that shortly. But just before that, we're learning from the deputy ranking that about 44,000 teachers left the teaching profession in the year 2021 alone. That's according to Clemente Park. Has this been on your radar?
Oh, that is not according to Clemente Park. It's actually according to the Ministry of Education. That is in the original data captured in the Education Management and Information Systems report released by the Ministry of Information as far back as December. And we have raised that issue. It's actually more than 40. It's about 45,000. About 15.4% of teachers left primary and junior high schools in 2021 alone. And we raised the issue because we were alarmed, looking at the trend in teacher attrition. Averagely, teacher attrition between 3 and 5%. We are seeing a 15% increase in teacher attrition. 15% teacher attrition in 1 year. But there is a global phenomenon. I've been reading articles from the Forbes magazine and other reputable websites where the issue of high attrition has been linked to the post-COVID school reopening process and all that. And so I see a trend not only in Ghana, but in other African countries, and especially in Eastern and Western Europe. We've seen some irregular movement of teachers from the classroom. But our situation is irregular because I haven't seen the teacher attrition of more than 10% in the past 20 years. And what we have on our hands is 15% leaving the basic school system in just 1 year.
And now to your outlook, what should we watch out for, very briefly?
Well, I think we are still in the middle of our reform. We should watch out for the rollout of the junior high school curriculum. And we should watch out for the supply of textbooks to support the proper implementation of the primary school curriculum, which had a false start in the past 2 years. We have urged the Ministry of Education to ensure that as it plans to roll out the junior high school curriculum, it doesn't suffer 2 years without textbooks as the primary school suffered, and that it should do everything within its might power to make textbooks available for junior high schools within the first year of the curriculum implementation, so that the lessons from the primary school process is actually learned, moving forward.
Mr. Asari, we are grateful for your time. That's the Executive Director of Africa Education Watch.